A'ja Wilson believed she had just signed the largest contract in WNBA history for the entire day. The supermax she had been pursuing for 3 years was about $5 million, and she told everyone who would listen on social media. Aliyah, Boston, and the Indiana Fever rendered it meaningless in less than 48 hours. $6.3 million over the course of 4 years, using the epic clause of the current collective bargaining agreement. Next in line is Caitlin Clark, when she becomes eligible the next year. Wilson has been the loudest voice in this league for years, whining about everything, and now she is witnessing 2 Indiana players break the pay record that she hardly ever held. Why does Wilson feel so envious? Tell me in the comments section below. Fever in Indiana. Aliyah, Boston, a 3-time WNBA All-Star, is agreeing to a 4-year, $6 contract. She signed a $3 million contract extension with the team, earning the highest overall compensation in league history. Zach Kendra Andrews and Alex Philippou are informed by Miller of WME Basketball. Bossa will earn 20% of the cap from $27 to $29 and $1 million in the next season. Wilson signed her contract and announced it to the world right away. A 3-year, around $5 million supermax extension with the Las Vegas Aces. And she presented it as the logical culmination to everything she had constructed, just as you would anticipate. 2 finals MVP honors, 4 MVP trophies, and the largest deal in league history. She was technically correct about that last portion for approximately a day. The epic provision is a particular clause contained in the new collective bargaining agreement that neither Vegas nor Wilson likely anticipated. It performs what the previous system never permitted and stands for outstanding performance on the initial contract, as long as they have won an MVP award or been selected to the WNBA first or second team during their first 3 seasons. It allows players who are still on rookie contracts to renegotiate out of those agreements and into maximum money far quicker than before. Young players had to wait under the previous method. The purpose of the epic provision was to eliminate the need for them to do so. The Rock is AB. She is the one who maintains everyone's composure and controls the situation. She has had an impact on this team ever since she put on a Fever uniform. She truly owns the future of this beloved ball club, and she will take them to some unique places. However, she is completely submerged in the paint as she catches the ball. She is the WNBA's most productive player. Boston Aliyah was eligible. She was selected for the WNBA second team in 2025, following her 3rd straight All-Star selection since being selected first overall in 2023. And as soon as that window opened, the Indiana Fever front office shifted $6 for 4 years. Before Wilson's deal had even finished circulating on social media, the largest contract in WNBA history for $3 million was signed. Because there was no system in place to force her off the top of the pay scale, Wilson's supermax worked under the outdated premise that she would remain there. And veterans who had previously made money were not eligible for the epic provision. Boston is young, already decorated, and on a team that is prepared to commit to a long-term window rather than just glue things together year by year, which is precisely the kind of player for whom it exists. Her patience, readiness, and sense of the game are all enhanced by a variety of techniques and finishes. Amazing efficiency and touch. Down beneath, she is muscular and nimble, is quite erratic around her. She mixes things up, she makes quick adjustments. Boston Aliyah, what is she unable to do? Boston is trying to find a way in, turns it inside out. In addition, Boston scored the lead after the foul. She succeeds. Will be lifted into overtime by Boston. You can learn a lot about what's really happening in Indiana by looking at how Boston arranged that deal. In 2026, she takes $1 million, which is purposefully less than what she could have asked for up front, and in the years that follow, it rises to 20% of the wage maximum. It's not an accident that structure exists. Kelsey Mitchell locked in a $1 million since it kept the Fever's books flexible enough to keep her. She has her own $4 million supermax, and rather than dismantling the roster to compensate a single player, it allows opportunity to continue adding depth around the core. Contrast that with Wilson's circumstances in Vegas, where it is said that all of her teammates accepted concessions in order for Wilson to sign a top-of-market contract. 2 franchises, and 2 entirely different ideas about the relationship between celebrities and wealth. Avoid leaving a The table has a penny. Avoid leaving a smell on the ground. You take everything. You get that Supermax spectacular bargain because you deserve it and earned it. After that, the Indiana Fever will have Aliyah Boston, Kale, and Clark through 2029. And that allows them to go back-to-back for 3 years. They will have 3 years to ensure that the entire team is assembled for these two. Following the announcement of the Boston signing, Clark tweeted, "Absolutely. Congrats, AB." Boston responded, "God is great. Let's go." There were no lengthy comments or well-planned publicity moments, just two guys who are obviously in agreement. Right now, that's the culture in that locker room. Furthermore, it wasn't an accident. For fewer than 48 hours, Wilson was the most paid player in WNBA history. In order to keep her teammates whole in the first year, the player who knocked her off that perch voluntarily took less money. Since it's more than simply a contract record that was overturned, that's perhaps the portion that hurts the most. In public, a very different set of values is prevailing. Additionally, Boston's offer isn't even Indiana's maximum. In 2027, Clark will be eligible for Epic. Additionally, every forecast indicates that she will sign a deal that will simultaneously place two Fever players at the top of the WNBA pay scale, time. Anything that has never been accomplished by a franchise. Everyone else is compensated. That's her name, so it's time. The reason is Caitlin Clark. The moment has come for the purpose to gather as well. While everyone else shouldn't just eat while she runs around and takes shots, this isn't for that. Aliyah Boston, congratulations. Well deserved. Well deserved. I'm glad the Indiana Fever kept her confined for many years. For years to come, Caitlin Clark's and Aliyah Boston's dynamic duel will be a formidable force in this league. Aliyah Boston entered Vegas during a real basketball series and physically dismantled Wilson in the post prior to the contracts and financial records. How unbalanced it was inside is not adequately reflected in the box scores. The 2025 WNBA semifinals were not expected to be close. Wilson, home court, and a strong roster geared for postseason runs were all available to the Aces. Clark was one of 6 players that Indiana was missing. Therefore, this appeared more like a Vegas coronation than a true series on paper. That memo was not received by Boston. The only person who could get away with this is A'ja Wilson. Take a look at this. ESPN referred to this as a highlight. Both were readily visible. Feet lift off the ground and return to the earth. That's against the law, and let's investigate this. 2 dribbles, she spins and uses both hands to touch it, as if this were first-grade material. Naturally, the referees miss it since it's A'ja Wilson. She's dribbling, uses a spin motion to touch it with both hands, collects it and gives it to a colleague. Watch this too, to be travel. She uses that foot as a pivot. This is kind of like angelry, similar to a 3-in-1 game. That is terrible. Wilson was actually unable to cope with her methodical and forceful technique in the paint. Indiana should have been reaching the free throw line far more frequently than they did, because Boston sealed position early on every possession, caught the ball in high percentage locations, and either completed or made enough contact. Particularly in Game 4, Boston had such complete dominance of the interior that she produced 13 free throw attempts on her own, demonstrating the precise amount of contact she was making when the ball reached her in the post. Despite her skill, Wilson was unable to directly match Boston's might, and play after play in the movie supported that. Wilson had few alternatives when Boston caught the ball and sealed him deep. She could watch Boston work, foul, or give up her position. And none of those results were beneficial to Vegas. Boston's internal pressure also made it more difficult for Vegas's perimeter shooters by collapsing the paint, because the entire defensive structure begins to bend when your post defender is being escorted to her position on every possession. Has anyone noticed that A'ja Wilson is trying out for an NFL offensive lineman position during the 4th quarter? Next, have a look at it. Don't watch this if you want to avoid getting angry. 2 minutes remain in overtime on a rolling screen, and after fouling out, this is the game's biggest shot. Boston for less money. Inside, Boston was winning the series. When you examine the free throw totals for the entire series, they reveal an entirely different narrative than what the movie advocated. And Vegas produced visits to the line at a pace that was inconsistent with what was truly occurring on the court. And Steph White openly demanded that the officiating practices from that series be looked at. A head coach doesn't do it lightly. White wasn't complaining to a reporter. She formally asked, she didn't get the officiating's transparency. Wilson's movement off the ball was dissected by film analysts, who also tallied at least 37 illegal screens that were never called over the 5 games. Furthermore, those screens weren't coincidental. Throughout the series, they produced wide looks and simple baskets for ace shooters. Boston continued to make contact in the post that was not called on the opposite end. That isn't just 1 or 2 missed calls. That's a motif in 5 different games. And have a look at these moving screens. And she completely ruins Lexi Hall. And you know what? That play results in a 3-point basket for them. That was not referred to as an offensive foul. Take a look at this. Observe how she protrudes her leg. They question why they are able to make 3-pointers and layups. Take a look at the space created when an unauthorized screen is installed. Because of this, it's unlawful. One more, take a look at this. Her teammate had just enough time to make a 3-pointer when she slid over. Observe how she accomplishes this. At the end, she thrust her hips. Take a look. She can earn an open layup by thrusting her hips to gain more room. As I mentioned, they scored 10 points despite not calling 4 offensive fouls. Lexi Hall was after losing Game 1, I had to struggle with a back problem for the duration of the series. And despite being clearly in pain, she continued to play, defend Jackie Young, and make 5 3-pointers in Game 3. Since Indiana was obviously competing against more than just the Aces, Hull's performance, despite being injured, actually made the whistle disparity more noticeable. Hull also publicly criticized the calling. They suffered injuries, were shorthanded, and received unfair foul calls. And they continued to push Vegas to its limits. Boston outperformed any honest viewer of the movie will find Wilson in the paint throughout that series. Due to their depth, home court, and a free throw discrepancy that Steph White felt strongly enough to publicly contest, the Aces managed to survive. The league never tackled this issue. Although Boston made Wilson appear to be the supporting player in their individual battle, Vegas prevailed in the series. And she accomplished it on the road without Clark on the floor thanks to a coaching staff that refused to give up and a roster that was held together by perseverance. When a foul is called every 10 seconds, it is difficult for us to find flow. It truly is, after all. We are unable to move up and down the floor when they are at the free throw line, which presents a problem. They were, far more physically defensive and hostile. You know, we didn't use our back cuts or off-ball movements to counter it. They forced us to step outside of our comfort zone. Offense, after all, is all about rhythm. It has to do with timing. It has to do with spacing. They prevented us from doing it, and we let them do it. The contract was not the beginning of any of this. Since Clark's first day in the league, now Wilson has been using the same playbook, and each and every time, Wilson ends up looking worse than she was initially outraged about. Wilson publicly questioned Clark's signing with Nike, the largest women's basketball contract in Nike history, for a whole month before she joined the WNBA. An entire campaign, not just a few remarks. She questioned Clark's prominence, marketing campaign, and attention, in comparison to guys with years of league experience. Wilson's response to the Nike deal became the main topic of conversation, to the point where the Nike deal itself became a secondary story. The irony is that, rather than drawing reduced attention to Clark, all that hubbub actually increased it. Her name is A'ja Wilson Wilson. It boils my blood when people say it's not about race, because it is. One, it doesn't matter what we all do as Black women. We're still going to be swept under the rug. Wilson failed to consider the fact that Nike was purchasing more than just a basketball player. They were purchasing crossover appeal, a player whose fan base was far larger than WNBA viewers, and the figures almost instantly support that. Clark's Nike merchandise sold quickly. Wilson's sneaker, the A1, hasn't sold out after being on the shelves for months, and that's a really particular kind of response in the sneaker industry. I couldn't stop thinking about the top player in the league ought to be more than just a shoe enthusiast, do you think? Indeed. Correct. You don't need my opinions, so I would want to hear your comments on it. You already know what I'm thinking. However, that's how little children, become fans of A'ja when they follow LeBron. I would be interested in hearing your opinions on that. She needs a shoe of her own. Allow me to respond. That. 2-time MVP, she is the MVP. She won't, so I'll honk her horn. Olympic gold medalist and 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. Her team likes to stop. Nike obsessively monitors product velocity and uses that information to inform resource decisions. Even before it was fully released, Clark's signature shoe was expected to sell out in a matter of minutes. As a result, Nike began changing its marketing strategies, increasing the number of Clark ads, content, and shelf presence. Wilson's shoe line no longer received the same push. No one at Nike made that announcement. You could see it taking place. According to the widely shared new video, and Caitlin Clark appears to have closed the Nike headquarters. Since the Team USA tryout, Caitlin Clark has remained inactive. Up until now, that is. She went around the Nike headquarters, known as the Nike Studios. Clark went on to win Time Athlete of the Year. Wilson's response to that also didn't go well. In a single season, Clark attracted more new fans to women's basketball than the sport had seen in a very long time, which is why she won. Wilson's public backlash also seemed to be geared at the same audience increase that other WNBA players profit from. No matter how you feel about the prize, that's not a nice look. When you're a boat, you don't gripe about the increasing tide. The similar pattern applied to the speaking fee situation. Clark's popularity outside of basketball increased so quickly that she began to fetch high fees for keynote speeches and appearances. Wilson also made it clear that Clark's financial success came at the expense of established players. Endorsement markets don't operate like that. Wilson does not lose money when a brand invests in Clark. These are distinct budget lines, distinct choices, and distinct assessments of the contributions that each athlete makes to a collaboration. Her name is A'ja Wilson Wilson. Forbes named Clark one of the most influential women in athletics. She said, "It doesn't matter what we all do as Black women, we're still going to be swept underneath the rug. That's why it boils my blood when people say it's not about race, because it is." Additionally, the disparity between Wilson's and her endorsement portfolio continues to grow, not due to league partiality or media bias, but rather because sponsors assess reach. They assess how supporters react to a player during public events, and they examine whether being associated with that player enhances or detracts from their reputation. Wilson established a track record during his month-long attacks against Clark, and before they sign anything, any marketing team investing actual money on a long-term contract is undoubtedly performing that research. The same source is responsible for Clark's Nike contract, her time recognition, her Forbes placement, and her speaking earnings. The companies that write the largest checks are aware that she is currently the most commercially appealing female athlete in the world. And Wilson continues to view Clark's ceiling as a critique of her own floor, an each. When she does, she responds to the same query those businesses are attempting to ascertain about her. Is the association worth the commotion? That's crazy. That's absurd because sources close to A'ja Wilson chose to respond even though no one asked. Wilson's record, which she hardly held, is not simply broken by Boston's deal. It's the first component of a financial structure Indiana has been discreetly putting together, and it will place two of the richest contracts in the league on the same team at the same time. Something that has never occurred. Completed previously in the WNBA. Every indication suggests that Clark will sign a contract that either meets or surpasses Boston's $6 when she becomes eligible for Epic in 2027, $3 million. When that occurs, the Indiana Fever, a team that has previously demonstrated its ability to compete well into the playoffs while being short-staffed, simultaneously controlled two of the largest contracts in league history. It's not a hype-based projection. Without Clark for the majority of 2025, that roster tested Vegas to the limit and returned in 2026 even more formidable. She defends, you block shots, you can't keep her at bay, and she demands she will either crush it or double it. Boston is a very adaptable city. Aliyah Boston's playmaking has been amazing. She is an exceptional passer. Because of this, she poses a threat from a variety of locations on the floor. What a pass, huh? Turn left from Boston to Mitchell. Sir installed it. Boston. Two more. A tiny Boston made a tough shot. It's incredible. And the way the supporters get up and support us, in my opinion, I wouldn't exchange any of the games because they are all so unique. All of this is financially feasible because Boston took $1 million in 2026 rather than optimizing her present earnings. The Fever was able to give Kelsey Mitchell $1 because of the intentional gap in her first-year compensation, $4 million supermax of her own, preventing their most potent attacking player from leaving. Mitchell is a real asset to this club. Indiana made it to the semifinals of the playoffs because of her. 2025. A lesser player might have crumbled under the pressure, but Clark carried the attack through periods of time while he was out. Both Lexi Hall and Sophie Cunningham resigned. And those actions took place as a result of Amber Cox's front office at Indiana, structuring the entire process on maintaining proven depth rather than pursuing names. Hall's perseverance throughout the 2025 postseason run, guarding Jackie Young despite a back ailment, is just the type of guy you develop around Boston and Clark. Cunningham's aggressiveness off the bench complements Steph White's style of play, which emphasizes ball movement over isolation and is quick and physical on the interior. Boston and Clark are not pitted against one another for touches under that arrangement. Because of Caitlin Clark, the excitement around both of them is greater than that of AJ Wilson. Because let's face it, Caitlin Clark is as objectively regarded as the greatest of all time as H. Wilson, and no one was referring to A. in Wilson as the GOAT prior to this Clark. Vegas developed its model in a distinct way. Wilson's Supermax is the focal point of all the Aces' financial operations, and the entire system hinges on Wilson giving her best effort each season, while the players around her settle for less to make the numbers work. Wilson has been truly excellent, which is why that approach has worked. However, Boston's contract has altered the definition of competitive at the top of the pay scale. Additionally, Wilson's agreement prevents Vegas from reacting in the same way that Indiana may. Because Boston already took the short-term discount that made room, Amber Cox has positioned the Fever to absorb Clark's enormous deal in 2027 without demolishing anything around her. Our two stars on the same team, who are both below their true market value in the foreseeable future, seem to be okay with it because the squad around them is superior. Vegas's financial structure reflects the fact that Wilson has never conducted business in that manner in public. At the time, you were aware that the post from A'ja Wilson had not been denied due to the delay. Next, Asian shoes are released and so forth. That was a significant rollout. Even though she received the big deal and is the most popular, there was conjecture that Nike was concerned about stepping on toes or upsetting anyone by releasing the CC shoe before everyone else. But it's coming. Additionally, Steph White's technique is designed for a longer window than Indiana is receiving credit for: ball movement, pace, and inside defense. These are more than simply catchphrases for her coaching style. These are the particular reasons that Clark's playmaking and shooting don't conflict with Boston's postgame. With Clark fully integrated into that system and a healthy roster, the Fever's 2026 playoff run demonstrated that the core can compete with Vegas even though they are still developing. This presents the Aces with a different challenge than anything they have hitherto encountered. Clark hasn't signed a contract yet, and Wilson's 3-year, $5 million Supermax, which she described as her financial crown, presently ranks third on the list of all-time salaries. Wilson was the WNBA's loudest player for many years, and the highest compensation. Both of those statements cease to be true within a week in 2026. Clark hasn't even signed her contract yet. Dome and Boston signed a larger one. Wilson's complaints about justice, recognition, and who should earn what in this league are all addressed by two Fever players who willingly accepted a lower salary in order to maintain a full squad and went on to win as a result. In 2027, Clark achieves epic eligibility. Additionally, Indiana has the two largest contracts when she signs. Wilson's $5 million crown ranks third in WNBA history. Why does Wilson feel so envious? Tell me in the comments section below. Subscribe, like, and activate every alert so you never lose out.